Hey travelers, Mag, FlCrafters, and ormustr here on another adventure on the trails here in Oahu. FlCrafters and I had in mind an easy trail for today, but we have another plan in store instead. When we proposed that to ormustr, he said he was willing to tour guide for us on what is arguably one of the greatest adventures here in Oahu. So we're gonna take him at it and try. We don't have many geocaches in front of us, only 3, and 2 of those lead the way to where we're really going. Up through the Makaha Valley to a geocache known as the Great Pumpkin entrance to the underworld. It promises to be every bit of an adventure, but to get there, we have at least 3 miles ahead of us. Hard to say for sure because we got to curve around that valley. Either way, we have a work cut out for us, and I can't wait to show you what's at the end of this trail. Come on, let's go.
Between the beach and the entrance to the valley, there is almost nothing to be found here, save for the Makaha Valley towers. The nearly 600 living spaces that these towers afford bring a little bit of life to what is otherwise a pretty dead area.
Right away, let's get the obvious part out of the way. The trail to get there through the valley starts on this road, which is bracketed on both sides by these private property no trespassing signs. These are specifically for the vehicles. This is the way you have to take to get out to this, and you just stay on the side of the road and hike your way up. Locals do it all the time. We just watched some locals pass up there, and it's the only way to make this thing happen.
This is a trail that you aren't going to be finding in any hiker's guides or even online searches.
We got to meet ormustr on our last adventure and learn about when he began geocaching, and also learn that he is an avid hiker. But I don't think we got into just how avid of a hiker he actually is. We only have access to him as adult supervision for a few more trips here before he heads off to do something absolutely crazy. You want to tell us a little bit about it, ormustr?
I'm going to be hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, which is 2,650 miles. Starts in the Mexico border in California, goes all the way to the Canadian border in Washington.
And he did not mispronounce that. That's 2,650 miles, right?
That's right.
That's a mind-boggling number. And what are some of the sights you expect to see along the way there?
Well, the first 700 miles is going through the southern Canadian desert. And then we get into the Sierras, where we'll do Mount Whitney, which is the highest point in the continental US. And then we'll do the John Muir Trail up to Yosemite, where I hope to get a side permit to do a Half Dome in Yosemite National Park. And then we'll continue to Northern California. Once we get into Oregon, we'll definitely do the side trail for Eagle Creek, and hopefully make it all the way to the Canadian border in Washington.
He is an ambitious hiker right there. That's quite the goal. And while he won't be doing daily updates along the way on that trail, and that's tough enough as it is, he will be doing some updates after the fact. So when I get those links, I'll be adding them into the comments if you want to check it out. But either way, hats off to you, and I hope that trail gives you everything you want out of it.
We considered hiking out for the next listing in front of us on our previous adventure, but now we're sure glad we didn't.
Not too many geocaches out here for us to find, but it is really not about the quantity. It is all about the quality. And in this case, that is a regular size container right here, which makes a nice warm up, because our next find heading out on this trail isn't going to be for a solid 3 miles before we get near the tunnel at the end of the valley.
Feeling accomplished and having added our names to a logbook, now we set out on the long hike in front of us.
Now, while it does seem like we've been spoiled having a road under our feet like this, it's not gonna last. We were able to take the road all the way up from the beach where we had to park for this thing, but up ahead it's gonna come to an end. The entire second half of this hike through the valley is not gonna be quite as forgiving. Fortunately, terrain-wise, it won't be that bad. We're gonna have a gradual uphill slope, and at no point will we be climbing these enormous ridges around us.
Instead, we get to enjoy the view of the ridges looming over us, bracketing us in from either side, confident in ormstr's assurance that there will be no climbing today. At least, no substantial climbing today.
And that's it. Easy Street continues that way. Our road goes into the valley from here.
We appreciate having a guide along to show us where to turn off from the road to follow the trail down. Though we might have guessed at it ourselves, we also might have guessed wrong. There are several sets of hunting trails crisscrossing their way throughout the valley, and ormustr relayed to us that on his first adventure out here, he took several of the wrong routes.
I'm actually a bit shocked to find myself hiking in the shade. This side of the island is dry, very dry, and our entire hike on the trail out on the western point, there was no tree cover whatsoever. Now granted, these trees don't get up all that high. You know, really I could reach and touch the tops of any one of them, but they're still overhead just enough to give us shade, and that is a beautiful thing.
What might make navigating through the valley particularly difficult alone is that it is not uncommon to see a no trespassing sign on one side of the trail and an official trail marker pointing the way on the other.
We've only made it half a mile, and this is our third stream crossing. So it's clear that this trail is going to continue zigzagging back and forth across this stream as we work our way further up the valley. The water hazards are only making it that much more entertaining, though, right, FlCrafters?
Yeah.
Though she may not have sounded particularly enthusiastic about having to cross back and forth across the river, let me assure you that FlCrafters always enjoys getting out here and having adventures just like this.
This is, unfortunately, as close as we're going to get to this hayout. Access is blocked. We're not going to be trespassing. But according to the sign right over there, this was, long ago, Kahuna's apartment. Doesn't look like bad digs if you ask me.
From our legal vantage point outside of the fence line, it was hard to tell just what kind of kahuna had taken up digs there. In Hawaiian, kahuna can be used to refer to an expert in just about any field.
Looks like luck is on our side. We were fortunate enough to reconnect to another road, and according to our adult supervision here, we got about a mile on this thing before once again we disappear off into the woods and continue this adventure ever closer to where these valleys converge on the adventure ahead.
ormustr describes many of the species of trees around us and then spots a prize off the side of the trail.
ormustr, what is the treasure you have in hand here?
This is the lilikoi, or passion fruit is the common name for them.
Found a
Very
couple
good.
of them.
Found a
And
couple.
this is gonna make a nice snack later.
We are.
Look at that, we've got our calories coming back to us already.
And I'm watching out for some more.
Yep, keep those eyes open.
Admittedly though, passion fruit is not a native species to Hawaii, though you would be forgiven for thinking so, as it is commonly associated to the Hawaiian Islands. It is actually a fruit native to Brazil, Paraguay, and Argentina that was brought to Hawaii in 1880. It does very well growing here in the tropics.
All right, this is where our road once again comes to an end. This road was established for the water stations that they had along the way so that they could access them for maintenance. And since this is the last water area, that's the last they needed a road for. Right here next to this no trespassing, we're actually gonna break off just to the right. That's where our trail continues on this adventure. And we were all wondering just why. Why are you building a fire pit here in the middle of the road? None of this makes any sense to me.
The trail only follows against the fence line for a short distance before breaking away further into the valley. From here, there will be no more easy roads to follow along with. It's all trail all the way.
Definitely no complaints so far. We have passed the 4-mile mark now, gained a gradual, very gradual 1,200 foot elevation gain. And even though we're back on the trail and off the road, these conditions could not be better with the shade overhead, cool breezes in the tree, nice company, and sure footing. I approve of what we have so far, but again, I still have an idea of what's coming up ahead.
And I only have that notion because that's what ormustr told us to motivate us to come out here today. The further we find ourselves hiking into the valley, the more we feel like we are on a true geocaching expedition. For the most part, the trail falls pretty closely to the river on one side or the other at pretty much all times as it forms the low point of the valley. This simple fact necessitates that we must each cross back and forth across the river to the logical point to catch back onto the trail. FlCrafters and I both have to take each of these crossings very carefully, but ormustr practically sails across with his long legs.
I've heard about coffee being the thing to wake you up in the morning, but this is the first time that it's ever slapped me awake in the morning. These coffee leaves have now overtaken the trail, and this is an invasive species out here. So we have no compunction for shredding these things on the way up, because that's exactly what they do. They host events and come out here and do exactly that.
The first coffee plants were brought to the Hawaiian Islands in 1813 and were shortly after widely cultivated. But in valleys like this, left unchecked, they can become quite invasive.
This is one of the reasons why adult supervision is so awesome, because we're at the ground zero for our cache leading up to this prize, and the last finder for the geocache several years ago is standing right next to me. So if there's anybody that knows where the geocache should be hidden, it's ormustr. We checked the spot, it wasn't there. We dug everything out around it, it wasn't there, and knowing exactly where he replaced it, great memory by the way, we went ahead and left a replacement container. So the next geocachers brave enough to take on this trail, they'll have something to find now.
The sole geocache out here helping to guide the way in toward our objective is about half a mile out. But it turns out that is the most significant half mile we will have to deal with as the conditions become a lot rougher here.
Now that we have passed the geocache marking our way in, this is where the rubber is really starting to meet the road. We're at exactly the 5-mile mark on the trail now, not 4.99, 5 miles, that's an important difference. And it is starting to climb. We have the ridge on our right and the ridge on our left hemming us in. So we're running out of options on where to go except straight forward
and straight up. It's definitely more of an incline that we've dealt with the whole way up here. It's still reasonable by comparison to some of the many other trails we've done out here to this point.
The one good thing about having to climb is it always affords the opportunity for beautiful views. In terrain like this though, it is short-lived because right after that, we're back into the thick of it.
These little guys are a trip. We're being extra careful with these coming out on the trail because they look benign at first, but if you zoom in really closely on them, you can see that the entire surface of the plant, all the edges of the leaves, these little flowers, the stems, everything is covered in these tiny little thorns. I do not want to put my hands anywhere near this thing, so I'm using this hiking stick to brush them out of the way as we continue to progress along the trail.
The smell in the air begins to take on a distinct aroma that I recognize from the Wili Wili Niue Trail.
And enter the strawberry guavas. These are now thick around us on the trail, hemming us in, creating quite the obstacle course at some points. But that nice smell in the air. I really love the smell of the strawberry guavas. And the good thing about having these out here is if you come up on an edge, these are one of the few species of plants that you can count on to make sure that you're not going to fall off.
And while that has been a legitimate concern on many trails we've been on, there's no falling off here.
They are rather few and far between, but seeing these trail markers as we make the final ascent up to this cache does make a difference for us, because the trail has gone from pretty clear to not obvious at all, and we have to go a little bit based on what looks like it's the best thing, and of course standing right over there guiding the way still, the adult supervision, ensuring we're never going to be too lost out here.
Frankly, I have no idea how ormustr remembers this trail as well as he does. But he is on the ball each time, letting us know when we're about to come up to another crossing to jump over the river. And no matter how dim or completely non-existent the trail becomes, he always sees some sort of sign to let him know just which way he needs to go, without ever once having to fire up a GPS.
Closing in on the last 1,000 feet, there's no longer any semblance of a trail for us to follow. And we are walking up the stream beds full of rocks where possible, navigating under or over fallen trees as applicable, and just in general, wading through the brush, making our way forward on this final approach.
If you've ever hiked out there with a tall friend, you might recognize that ormustr is actually pulling double duty in front of us. He's not only leading the way, but also clearing all the spiderwebs out of our path.
We see trail markers like that right there. I mean, it's like gotta be a joke. This isn't a trail, this is a bushwhack.
The stream bed proves to be the best place to make a little bit of distance with the least amount of resistance.
We are closing in on the last 100 feet to the tunnel entrance now, and it has actually cleared out quite a bit. So in a video game logic, this is where you would actually be a little worried, because when you've been fighting through a very difficult level and it starts to get really easy, that means you got a boss fight coming up, and I think that's exactly what's ahead of us.
As we approach the ground zero, ormustr stands back and allows FlCrafters and I to find what we're looking for.
We have made it to our destination, and this was an incredibly difficult spot to find. This is our objective. This tunnel here right in front of me drops down under the earth, and you can hear the water dripping. It's wet down there, and it's a mudslide. And the geocache we're looking for, oh, it's down there all right. So in we go.
It feels like I'm sliding directly into the roots under a tree with no idea what's on the other side.
Come on, it's really fun in here, I promise. Oh, this water's chilly, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
FlCrafters spends a few extra moments outside of the entrance, letting us know that she thinks we're crazy. But then, she decides to join us down in the darkness as well.
All right, into the darkness we go.
I only take a couple of tentative steps before I decide to pull everything out of my pockets and put it in my hands instead.
Ormustr, now that you've lured us into this tunnel, what is your dastardly plan?
Lead the way.
Lead the way.
All right.
Short-legged turtle.
This expedition continues. We are working our way through this tunnel, keeping the head crouched because it's just not quite tall enough to stand up all the way in, at least not through that first section. But right here, the ceiling opens up a little bit. See, we got a bit more clearance, not bad.
This is a man-made tunnel to help channel the water out, which is why it is as unnaturally straight as it is. I'm actually standing all the way up here. And if any of you have taken the Tunnel of Light in Washington, which that video I called Tunnel of Darkness because I feel it's a much more appropriate name for it, this definitely has that beat. I'm sure the distance isn't too long, although if we have to go 2 miles in here, won't that be a story to tell? But it is wading through waist deep water through a completely dark tunnel. That's a new one on me.
And there's just something extra entertaining about being the one who gets to take point.
Can't really see anything up ahead. I've got a big flashlight here. I've got the spotlight on top of my camera. And even then, it's really just like pitch black. So we're just taking this one slow, careful step at a time. The ground is very firm underfoot, which is fantastic. No complaints there. And some places the ceiling dips down. So I'm being careful because if you ever bumped your head in a cave before, it is not something you ever want to repeat. It can be quite painful indeed. This is one of those things that make you wonder. And it's a question I ask myself quite frequently when I'm geocaching is, how does somebody find a place like this? Like, what geocacher is out on the trail and sees a tunnel leading under the trees and they're like, you know, I'm just gonna take a walk in there and see where it goes. But that's what we really love about geocaching is you've got that explorer who gets out there and does some absolute craziness and then marks some coordinates on the map and lets you know where the crazy is. Something that we're never gonna find in a trail brochure. Good luck finding this spot in a Hawaii hiker's guide. But you are gonna be hard pressed to find an adventure like this anywhere else on this island, I guarantee it.
And that really is why we're here, after all. Ormustr promised us an unforgettable adventure, and he did not disappoint. As soon as we emerge from the water, I spot some objects on the ground that have me scratching my head. But from here on out, it seems that we'll be free and clear to walk without having to do any more waiting. While this does allow us to move a little bit faster, we still take it pretty slow because it is still very easy to bump your head if you're moving too quickly. An avoidable mistake that this guy seems to have made.
Oh, this is freaky right here. Look at what we got here. We got the little skulls on sticks on both sides, guiding the way in. Hanging here from the threads, we have some terrifying creatures of the night. And at the very end of the tunnel, where we can go no further, we have quite a big spider, by the way. Huge. Here, he's friendly. Here. You wanna hold him? He doesn't bite.
Oh, that kind of spider.
We have made it to our objective here in this dark, water-filled tunnel out in the middle of the valley after a long adventure to get here, and still, I'm definitely questioning our sanity, but we did it.
And from where we found our prize, we could go no further. That was truly the end of the road. From there, it was just a matter of making our way slowly back toward the end of the tunnel and escaping toward the sunlight beckoning us on the other side.
That was every bit the adventure we thought it was going to be. 5.5 miles up over a 2,200 foot elevation gain through the valley to reach the tunnel entrance that was completely obscured and out of sight. And that was really only the beginning of it because, of course, we had to go into that thing. Somehow we made it out with all pieces intact, a few head bumps along the way, but nothing too terrible. And it was an adventure that we will be talking about for quite a while after this. I hope you guys have enjoyed this trip, walking through the valley with us and into the tunnel. And if you want to see the full footage, I've linked to that as well. Make sure to like this video, subscribe, stay tuned for updates, and we'll see you out on the trail.